Well, is there anything that causes more conformity, comparison, commentary, criticism, costly treatments, or consternation than one's hair? Whether it's Kim Crawford's voluminous hair, or Emma Gonzalez's brutally close-cropped hair, it seems to become political. Now, back in the 1960s, the baby boomers wanted hair like Jesus wore it. Hallelujah, I adore it, my hair. But today, buzzed hair is the sign of activism, agency, and empowerment. Well, go figure. I think for most of us, our hair has been about various kinds of torture involving amateur haircuts, permanent waves, straighteners, irons, braids, razors, tweezers, wax, and possibly even, if you were lucky, rotary nose hair clippers.
Don't look at me.
But hair is just hard to ignore, isn't it? Notice what people put on Facebook. Eyebrows, the one thing you can get into shape without exercising. Or I have 3 basic hairstyles: straight, curly, and homeless. Or let's have a moment of silence for all those good hair days when there was no one important who saw you. Or why was Pavlov's hair so curly? Okay, all the psychologists in the group.
Shock. Conditioning.
Classical conditioning. You were thinking too hard. Okay. Well, tonight we'll hear all about it. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a lot of fun. Our first reader, Eileen Smith, the youngest of 4 Army brat siblings, spent her formative years in 5 different countries and attended more than 20 schools before the age of 16. Her executive professional resume includes burger flipper, tub scrubber, graphic designer, ostrich farm hatchery manager, wine shop market deli co-owner, and massage therapist. When she's not analyzing complex data for a Fortune 6 health insurance company, Eileen enjoys knitting socks, singing with her church lady friends, baking bread, and laughing a lot. And you will laugh with her tonight as she reads Solid-hair-ity.
So there once was a girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. Oh wait, that story's already been told. That's a poem a long, long time ago. But give me a head with hair, long, beautiful hair, shining, gleaming, streaming, flaxen, wax. I know, wait, that one's been told too. It was a Broadway musical about 50 years ago. But this story is about a little girl who did have a little curl, extending from her not so beautiful head of long, curly, unruly, frizzy hair, right in the middle of her forehead. The story is about how that little girl was either ahead of her time, or too far behind the times, or just plain marching to the beat, offbeat rhythm of the music playing in her own head. And the story is about how she found her place in this world. This little one never quite fit in with the other kids on the block. When short, sassy bobs were in style, she had long, curly locks. When long, straight as a board, Cher hair was in fashion, she had curls that would not stay straight even after ironing. When perfectly layered, feathered blonde hair was all the rage, her mousy brown anti-Farrah follicles continued to be uncooperative, even after blow drying and applying an entire can of Aquanet. And to make matters more complex, this kiddo was never the most girly girl on the planet. She wasn't exactly a tomboy either, which didn't help her oh so fragile sense of belonging and worth. All she ever wanted in life was to fit in, to blend in, and to be just like everyone else. In her late teens, she discovered the first of many, many gray hairs among the brown. By the time she had sailed through her 20s, there was more salt than pepper in the tresses, which further alienated her from her peers. Even though nearly everyone in her circle of friends says, "Oh, that is so distinguished. Oh, it's beautiful. You're so lucky." The only voice that she heard, the only voice that she heeded, was the one from a very well-meaning, though misguided woman in her church who said, "Honey, that gray is awful. We've got to young you up and get you a man." Oh. Did I mention that this young woman grew up deep in the heart of Texas, where the cut, color, clarity, and height of a woman's hair is revered, judged, and appraised by the same standards as fine jewels? And did I mention that this is a true and possibly slightly embellished story? So fast forward nearly a decade and enter Ms. C. She's a smart, sassy, athletic, curvy, hilarious, tell it like it is, compassionate, not so girly, not so butchy woman with the best hair on the planet. It's short and spiky, and depending on the week, ranges in color from blonde to red to brown to platinum, and most colors in between. We met training for a 575-mile charity bicycle ride in 1997. And during the weeks and weeks of long training rides, we became fast friends. There's something about riding bikes and all the sweating and swearing and crying and laughing and learning how to change a flat tire in less than 10 minutes that breaks down inhibitions and barriers and preconceived ideas of who people are and what they're made of. So during a discussion one day about identities and roles, my friend casually confessed that the foundation of her identity as a smart, sassy, unique woman was intimately connected with her hair. When her hair looked good, she felt good, exuded confidence, grace, and her own brand of femininity. And that was about 99% of the time. But in contrast, no matter the style, length, or color of my hair, I never felt truly feminine in the classic definition of the word. I never exuded confidence. Grace was my maternal grandmother's name. So what was I missing? What did this dear friend possess besides perfect hair that I didn't? No one ever called my friend Sir, though her hair was much shorter than mine was at the time. No one ever mistook her for my mother when we were out shopping, even though her hair was platinum and mine was dyed some god-awful patchy color of the month. But for many reasons, I stopped coloring my hair and discovered that the salt and pepper that had been masked by Clairol's dark golden blonde for over a decade was now stark white. Not gray, not yellow, not blonde, but white. Eek! No one else in my family has white hair before they were in their late 60s. Not even my beloved great-aunt Bess, whose naturally raven black locks defined her well into her 80s. So what was going on here? Not only was I out of place in the world for being a not quite feminine enough woman, I was out of place for being totally white-headed in my early 40s. While most of Miss C's friends were male, many of the straight single ones were too intimidated by her inner strength and intelligence to be romantic interest for very long. She didn't have many close female friends because, as she laughingly said one day, they have important hair. So how did I happen to make the cut to her inner circle? I had the most uninspired hair around. I wasn't cool, hip, trendy, or stylishly fashion forward. I felt out of place in most situations. And I felt invisible. But one night in December 2005, I was supposed to be meeting Miss C and another friend at a favorite hole-in-the-wall Mexican restaurant in San Antonio. My sister happened to be in town for a conference, and she was looking forward to catching up with all of us over margaritas and enchiladas. When Miss C hadn't arrived after about 20 minutes, I gave her a quick call. "Hey, would you like us to order for you? You just running a little late from your doctor's appointment?" Her short, quiet reply is forever etched upon my soul. "Sorry, I won't be able to make it. I have cancer." What? Cancer? The most vibrant, healthy, athletic, fit person that I know has cancer? It's not possible. It's a bad joke. But it wasn't a joke. My friend Krista was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and would be facing nearly a year of chemo, sickness, and physical weakness. The chemo drugs she would be enduring had a 100% probability of causing hair loss. And everyone who knew Krista knew that losing her hair would probably be the most traumatic aspect of this whole ordeal. After all, her hair defined her. Her hair was the foundation of her identity. Being sick and weak and dependent are adjectives that are never used to describe Krista. Yet everything in her world was about to change. But that's another story for another time. While all of her friends rallied around her in support, I didn't know what to do. My dear friend was facing the fight of her life, and I felt totally helpless. But in true Krista faced this head-on and take-charge fashion, she proactively shaved her head of currently red spikes rather than wait for her hair to fall out in clumps and pieces. Krista's sister also shaved her head in support. So in an act of bravery, or stupidity, or love for an amazing friend, I shaved my white locks a few days later in Solid-hair-ity. And here's an interesting bit of news. Not one of Krista's male friends, some of whom were already starting to lose their hair in typical male pattern baldness fashion, shaved their heads to support her. Not one. Just 3 little women. Go figure. So telling my friends and my family what I had done was quite the adventure. My eldest brother said, "Oh, that's just like you," and then asked if I was going to wear a wig to work. I gently said, "You know, that would kind of defeat the purpose of shaving my head to support my friends. I'm not sick. I don't need a wig. I had a head of perfectly good hair. My friend was the one who was sick." "Oh, right," he responded. And my coworkers didn't know what to make of the bald lady in cubicle 2894. One asked if I thought my hair would grow back curly or straight. Another asked if I thought it would grow back a different color. And again, I gently reminded them, these dear folks, that no, I was not sick. No, I was not enduring the introduction of toxic chemicals in my bloodstream that had the potential to alter my DNA. My hair would grow back just as it had been before. "Oh, right," they responded. But one person from work did pull me aside. She let me know that she had been diagnosed with cancer, was undergoing chemo, and had been wearing a wig for a while. But no one at work really knew. She said that my showing up bald at the office gave her the courage to take off her wig that she'd been wearing since her hair started falling out the month before. Wow. During this time, I attended a family reunion in another state. My middle brother and I had not seen each other for several years. As he walked into the lobby of the hotel where we were all staying and he saw me, We both stopped and stared at each other. The rest of our family stopped and stared at both of us. Because my brother had recently changed hairstyles from years of wearing a very lengthy, very bad comb-over. And he was now mostly bald. So one of our cousins broke this silence and said, "Geez, y'all look like twins." And I don't know who was more in shock. My brother, because it dawned on him that he looked like his little sister. Or me, because I really did look like my brother. And it meant that we were definitely related. But I'll bet, though, that no one ever called him ma'am. In returning home, I noticed that people started looking and interacting with me differently. And not just because I lacked locks, curly or otherwise. Some of my former friends bolted for the door because I was bald. Some wanted to rub my head for luck. One went so far as to buy me a Davy Crockett coonskin cap from the souvenir shop at the Alamo, just so I'd have something that resembled hair on my head when we went out to dinner. As if my hair was a reflection of this person's acceptability and respectability in public. But all along the way, something began changing within me. How I carried myself, how I interacted with others. But mostly what changed was how I viewed the woman looking back at me in the mirror. I stood up a little straighter, a little taller. I smiled more. I wore different kinds of earrings. And even though I never wore much makeup and still don't, being bald helped me find a level of self-confidence, grace, and yes, even a measure of femininity that I never knew existed before. Without hair, I began to define myself with different terminology, not based on physical characteristics. Compassionate, empathetic, self-assured, confident, brave, resilient. Without hair, I discovered that not being like everyone else was just peachy keen. And yes, even fun. No hair dryers, no combs, no brushes, no collar. Know that Krista kicked cancer's ass. She is alive and well and living in San Antonio. Tomorrow is her 51st birthday. How she was transformed by the experience of being bald and beating cancer is her story to tell, and I hope that someday she will come visit and share that story with all of us. Oh, the little girl with the little curl right in the middle of her forehead grew up. She now has a head of fabulously curly white hair and found her place in this world in Solid-hair-ity and friendship with one amazing friend.
Our next reader, Alex Sanchez, is a young adult author, and some of his books are right over here on the table. He'd be happy to show them to you at intermission, and you will notice, by the way, he's very modest. His publisher happens to be Simon & Schuster, so he's not too shabby. He's a young adult author, and he's currently working on a graphic novel and a screenplay. Last year he moved back to Penfield from Thailand with his Laotian partner. And a little known fact about Alex, he just turned 61 and he celebrated this past week with his 624th haircut. He will share Learning to Leave.
Thank you. I grew up in the 1960s, a time of student demonstrations and civil rights protests. My family lived in Austin, Texas, a progressive, liberal outpost teeming with love beads, flower power, and a glut of hair. Beards, mustaches, sideburns, headlocks, here, there, everywhere, flowing, glorious hair. My own dark hair mirrored the style of the early Beatles. My bangs hung low over my forehead, propped up by my chunky plastic eyeglasses. In back, my hair crept over my collar like a lawn. And though I wasn't old enough to grow sideburns, I faked them, letting my thick hair grow down in front of my ears as if those really were sideburns. Mom kept this whole shebang of hair neat and tidy, with scissors, a razor comb, and newspapers spread on the living room floor for regular trimmings. She was an artist and had always encouraged me to be creative, to be myself, to be an individual. In 1969, I turned 12 years old, and my life suddenly spun a 180. Our family picked up and moved to Norfolk, Virginia, at the time a sleepy, segregated, mud-mired backwater that lived off of sooty coal barges and gray Navy battleships. At my new, very conservative, very traditional middle school, the girls were forbidden to wear pants. All the boys had Army-style crew cuts. My schoolmates treated me as if I were a foreign exchange student. I was exotic, unusual with my hair. The girls said it was cute. Occasionally, at recess, one would ask to run her fingers through the shiny strands. The boys marveled at my hair helmet, but stuck safely to their buzz cuts. I loved the attention. One day in the gleaming tile hallway that smelled of ammonia, our class lined up in single file for our march to the lunchroom. Whispering and giggling, we waited while our teacher, Miss Norfleet, talked with the principal. I don't remember my middle school principal's name, only that she was thin and tall and wore those triangular cat-eye glasses popular a decade earlier. "Young man," she called out to me, her voice echoing off the tiles. "At this school, we don't allow boys to wear their hair like girls. Report to my office tomorrow morning with your hair cut." All my classmates turned in my direction, whispering. It was the first time this principal had ever reprimanded or even spoken to me. I was a good kid. I made decent grades, never talked back to teachers, never got into fights, never caused any trouble. As my schoolmates stared, a wave of shame crashed over me, and a salty taste trickled down the back of my throat. I was speechless. "Are you going to cut it?" my lunch group asked. I answered in shock, "I don't know." Across the table they argued, "You'll be in trouble if you don't cut it. What gives her the right to tell him to cut it? You have to cut it. You shouldn't cut it. Cut it. Don't cut it." During the bus ride home, my thoughts bounced and jiggled from one side of my brain to the other. Reaching my house, I went to talk to my older brother. He was already in high school. His hair dangled to his shoulders. I sat and waited on his carpet till he got off the phone. When I told him about the principal, he laughed. "It's not funny," I said. "It's my hair. What should I do?" "Nothing," he said. "Just ignore her." "But she's the principal." "So," he shrugged, "like you said, it's your hair." I decided to ask my dad. He was in his study grading his college students' math papers. "If I tell you something," I said, "do you promise not to tell Mom?" His brow furrowed as he peered over his eyeglass rims. "What did you do?" I told him about the principal. "I'm not cutting my hair," I said. "I'm just going to ignore her." He stared at my fake sideburns. Tell your mother when she gets home. My stomach clenched. Mom was the parent in charge when it came to my brother and me. What she said ruled. And she loved to rule me. I don't want to tell her, I said. She'll make me cut my hair. I'm busy with work, he said, and shuffled back into his papers. During dinner, Dad watched the news. At the end of the broadcast, the anchor always said, "And that's the way it is." Dad shot me a glance, and when I stayed silent, he reported to Mom about the principal. "She can't make me cut my hair," I said. "You always told me to be creative, to be myself, to be an individual." "Yes," Mom said, shaking her head, "but we all have to follow rules." "But the rules are wrong. The principal's a dumb hick, like everyone else in this backward town." "Well," Mom said, "this is where we live now." "I'm not cutting my hair. What's she gonna do, kick me out of school because of it?" "We're not going to find out." "Go get the newspapers and spread them out." It's an odd thing growing up. There comes a moment when you realize the only real power a parent has over you is the power you give them. That moment hadn't come for me, not yet. I gathered the previous day's papers, laid them out on the carpet, and set a chair in the middle of the local news pages. Mom brought out her razor comb and shears. First to go was the hair creeping over my back collar. Snip, snip, snip. Next my bangs. Snip, snip. Then my left sideburn. Snip. My right sideburn. Snip. My hair rained to the floor in a storm. That night I hated my mom. I hated my dad. I hated the principal. Most of all, I hated myself. I swore that one day no one would be able to tell me what to do anymore. I wouldn't let them. One day I would leave. The next morning I dutifully reported to the school office. "Yes?" the secretary asked. "What can I help you with?" I glanced at the floor, my head burning with rage. "The principal wants to see me." "What about?" "She told me to get my hair cut." "I see. Sit down, please. I'll let her know." Through the doorway, I watched the secretary walk to the principal sitting at her big metal desk. "There's a boy here. He says you told him to get his hair cut." "I did?" The principal peered out the doorway, and the two women walked over to where I sat. "Yes, now I remember. Oh, your hair looks very nice. Doesn't his hair look nice?" "Oh yes, very nice." The salty taste trickled to the back of my throat again. I held back my tears. Later that year, I moved on to junior high, and after that to high school. As my parents forgot about the haircut episode, my hair inched longer and longer. When the end of high school approached, I bought a plane ticket with money I'd saved from a part-time job. And on the morning after graduation, I left home. I wish I could remember that principal's name so I could give her credit for helping teach me to leave.
Our next reader, Denise Martino, collects inspirational quotes, bags to carry her stuff, and art projects to satisfy her creative urges. She says she likes the idea of a clean house and exercise, but doesn't seem to accomplish either of them. However, she has recently taken up tennis and has bought a new bike, so that counts for something. Denise is a writer, artist, and a married mother of two preteens. She was born and raised in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, She now lives here in upstate New York and decides that that's a better place to live. A little known fact about Denise: when she was in high school, she joined the marching band and picked the alto sax because it was the instrument her older cousin played. However, she never learned to play the alto sax. She couldn't read music. And at competitions, she just wished herself invisible, so when the judges walked by, they wouldn't hear that she wasn't playing. Tonight, we're going to hear her. Loud and clear. Untangled.
History 101. My 8-year-old daughter has beautiful and wild brown ringlets that cascade past her neck and just hits her back, and when it's wet, goes much further. She often asks me why I have short hair, not understanding why I would cut it off. I have yet to explain to her in its totality. There is so much history that an 8-year-old wouldn't understand. I haven't completely understood it either. I'm going to attempt to untangle it here. Nappy head. That was me. With my relaxer, a chemical many of us African Americans use to straighten our naturally curly hair, started to grow out, the roots of my hair would sport a nest of curls that both looked unsightly and proved to be a challenge to comb. Scarves, wraps, and headbands were all used to hide it. Relaxers. Named for relaxing your natural curls. The thing is, there is nothing relaxing about it. A long process, whether you're doing it at home with the kids or at the hairdresser, with touch-ups every 8 weeks. A process that is left on your hair too long can burn your scalp. A process that is quite expensive, especially if you're on welfare, like we were. Hot combs. I would sit in a chair in the kitchen, my freshly greased, more on that later, locks waiting. My mom would put the metal hot comb on the burner to heat it up. When the hot comb reached my nest of curls, it would sizzle like bacon in a hot skillet. Occasionally I would flinch, or she would nick my skin, which would result in a lovely burn on my forehead, or my ear, or my neck. Pick one. Grease. Greasing is a once-a-week ritual that happens after the shampooing and conditioning of the hair. I would sit on the floor in between my mother's legs as she would proceed to part my thick hair in sections with a comb and apply a moisturizing substance that resembled Crisco to my scalp. A lot of craning the neck down to one side, the other side, and back. I got a lot of cramps. God forbid if I resisted or cried out in pain. If that happened, a swift crack of the comb would land on my already sore head. Perms. I remember seeing a school picture of me in 4th grade, I believe, sporting a jerry curl, aka perm. At the time it must have made sense, but now I don't understand. Curling my naturally curly hair. It looked like a clown wig plopped on my head. Follow this process if you can. Relax my natural curls to straighten them, and then put a jerry curl on top of the straight hair to make it curly. There was a spray you used daily, and if you put too much in, it would drip down your neck, onto your clothing, and also to the ground. Follow the drip, follow the drip. Braids. High school years, I discovered braids. Not just any braids. Hundreds of long, flowing braids that went just past my shoulders. Braids that involved using long strands of fake hair. Braids that involved pulling on every strand of my hair to connect the fake with the real. Braids that involved sitting for hours on end while my head is not my own and my scalp feels like it's on fire and my neck is one big knot. Braids that made it hard to scratch my itchy scalp and I end up patting my head instead. Braids that when I washed my hair, it felt like I added extra pounds to it as I waited for it to dry. Upside. It stayed in for a month or so. Was it worth it? Naturally. Partway through my college years, I just had it. I was done with frying my hair, burning my scalp, leaving scars all over. I even had an imprint of the word caution on my forehead once from a curling iron. I was done doling out money to do something unnatural to my hair. I was done with hours of my day being taken up by torturous hair care. I was done with the fear of getting my relaxed, hot-combed hair wet because water was the enemy and it would morph my hair. I was tired of it being something that it was not. Off with the hair.
Our next reader, Anais Salibian, has spent a lifetime trying to make the world a better place. For her profession, she chose a body-centered healing modality called Rosen Method Bodywork, which addresses the effects of trauma. She also teaches writing classes in memoir, making a difference, and the healing journey, which combines writing with the visual art. There's also a flyer up here about a program she's teaching this summer, so you can check that out. A little known fact about Anais. She got so depressed when Trump got elected that she signed up for a stand-up comedy class here at Writers and Books. And she said she failed miserably at stand-up, but she hopes she can make you laugh tonight. Her piece is, Beauty is Brutal. You might need to pull that down, yeah. That's better. Does this sound right? Yes. Okay. Everyone was in love with Charlie, even the guys. He was tall, lean, muscled as only dancers are, with a huge heart and deep wisdom. About 50 of us were gathered at a week-long co-counseling workshop in the Adirondacks on the topic of family patterns. At 32, I was new to this game and not the brightest player. It was my turn in front of the group, for I had identified an attitude in my family that goes something like this. We deserve to live too. Charlie kneeled to accommodate 5'0" me while he counseled me. He asked about my family. I think, I faltered, it's because we're Armenian. What does that mean to you? Well, my parents and grandparents had to flee the genocide. Things were breaking open inside me. Tears started to come. I had never publicly stated this family history, and I could feel my audience leaning in. But never mind the dawning realization of the effects of this brutal history. Never mind the seismic shift of my self-understanding. What really concerned me, what truly freaked me out in that moment, was that Charlie's gaze was in direct line of sight to my chin, whereupon the coarse black hairs I had neglected to pluck that morning were sprouting like weeds. Later, when the room was divided into support groups, it was the first time I knew which group to attend. Someone had suggested a group on hair, and there I was. I told them about Charlie's eyes at my chin, and every woman in the group screamed. Then we all burst out into raucous laughter, which probably sounded more like terror, but it did make the other groups jealous of how much fun they thought those of us familiar with mortification were having. No one ever warned me about puberty.
One day at age 9, I noticed that I was a freak. To my horror, hair had begun to show up in the most unlikely places, and it was rich, abundant, and dark. I not only had a mustache, I had 2 of them. One below my lower lip. I keep that one. But by high school, I had rid myself of the top mustache and the 3 woolly bears adorning my brow. When I was in my 20s, hippies saved me. They made it okay not to shave your legs. And even my boyfriends accepted the condition that my aghast mother, upon seeing my natural leg, called vachnalik, roughly translates as terrifying. I even had a hippie friend who let her beard grow, but I could never go that far. I pluck. Not just for appearance, but for comfort. Mine as much as anyone else's. I have empathy. Do men, on the other hand, have any idea what it's like to kiss them when they've got a fashionably trimmed 5-day-old stubble on their faces? If they're curious, they can try making out with the bottom edge of a whisk broom. Alas, I know because the whisk grows on my own chin, and on days when I'm not diligent, all I have to do is look down and give myself raisin burn on my own chest. As I wrote this piece, the word hirsute crossed my mind. So I looked it up for spelling. Much to my surprise, I discovered myself on WebMD as having a contagious medical condition caused by being a member of my family. Here's what the docs have to say. If you're a woman and you have a lot of hair growing in places where it normally does just for men, like your upper lip, chin, chest, stomach, or back, that's a condition called hirsutism. The hair is often dark and coarse instead of the light, fine peach fuzz that covers most of the body. Causes? Sometimes hirsutism runs in families. If your mother or sisters have it, you're more likely to get it. It's also more common in people from the Middle East, South Asia, and the Mediterranean. The Mayo Clinic hastens to add that women of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and South Asian ancestry are more likely to develop hirsutism with no identifiable cause than are other women. What I want to know is, do men whose backs are covered with a pelt have hirsutism? When I was young and innocent and still living in the Middle East, my mother would place a certain amount of water and sugar in a pot and boil them together until they formed a taffy-like paste. I was thrilled with the golden little pieces of homemade candy I got. Didn't pay much attention to what she did with her portion until I hit puberty. Ironic that puberty made me more like my father than my mother. Long dark hair on my legs, even longer dark hair on my arms, and that unibrow. One day, Mom came after me with a pancake-sized wad of her homemade concoction and plastered it on my leg. She patted it down and then ripped it off. Oh. I screamed. My leg involuntarily jerked and kicked her in the head. Part of me felt terrible about this. Another part thought it was what parents these days call a consequence. While she was momentarily stunned, I ran to the other side of the room before she could do it again. Come on, it's not that bad, she said. I looked down at the tiny droplets of blood on the bald patch of my leg and asked her if she was crazy. A woman has to have pain to be beautiful, she informed me.
Oh no.
Finding finding love is, of course, the whole reason a woman has to be so beautiful it hurts. In my 30s, I was single again, and the hippie season was over. I was looking for a man like Charlie to marry. As soon as I could afford it, that is, as soon as I had more money than I needed for food and shelter, I found a nice lady who performed electrolysis, which is electrocution by needlepoint. I kept making her lower her zap settings, even though she said I'd have to come more often. This way, when I dated, I could have, instead of black hairs on my chin, tiny little red welts that looked like chin measles. Have you been through this? Some years later, I was still single when a trusted friend, who was not from the Middle East, told me she had gone to a salon and gotten her legs waxed. Didn't it hurt? I asked. No, not at all. So I went. In a room with soft lighting and soothing music, I lay down on a massage table and a nice lady spread nice warm wax all over my legs from ankle to tops of thighs. She left the room for a few moments while the wax did its magic, and then she came in and ripped a strip off my leg. I learned years later that the ability to make not a sound while in agony is a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. Oh, my Armenian heritage at work again. I didn't scream this time, but my whole body broke out into a sweat and I nearly threw up. Nice and easy, she said, and ripped off another strip. In those days, trigger warnings were not yet fashionable. And I hadn't given myself one. But really, what fool? What fool with PTSD resulting from genocide torture stories, which include flensing, subjects herself to this? I looked down to see if I still had skin left on my leg. At the next ripping, yes, it sounds like ripping, I started shaking. It hurts a little, doesn't it? The clueless nice lady asked. I looked down at the tiny broad droplets of blood on my thigh and cursed my non-Mediterranean friend. We had another leg to go. When my legs were done, the nice lady asked me if I wanted her to do my armpits. Or was it what they call my bikini line? No, I said sweetly in my fantasies, would you like me to rip off your face? In real life, I declined and neglected to thank her for her services. Ever see the Mel Gibson movie, What Women Want? It's the only movie in which my reaction turned heads in the audience. Macho Mel decides he will understand women better if he puts himself in their shoes, or rather, heels. So the first time he puts on pantyhose is like the first time I did after puberty. Nylon mashing a jungle of gorilla hair against the leg. So he goes to the drugstore and comes home with a waxing kit. He's singing under his breath as he applies the wax. Following instructions, he rips it off. This is the part where I lose it. Braveheart screams on top of his lungs and starts hopping on one leg like oil sizzling in a hot pan. What I want to know is, do men ever consider having their balls waxed in order to be attractive to women? As for bad hair days, please don't tell me about yours. Mine happened on my arms. Those hairs grow so long that I sport a hirsute aura as thick as my arm itself. Bleaching them blonde never helped, for bracelets would still get tangled up in them. As for the depilatories that found their way onto my arms and upper lip, well, they're a fine way to get a chemical burn. So now I give my arms haircuts. It's fine snipping away at my left arm with my right hand. But the other leg, the scissors don't work and my contortions put Cirque du Soleil to shame. Still, I end up with jagged edges and uneven cuts, the only Rochesterian dreading summertime. I am currently married to a man who is the paragon of unconditional love, who doesn't care if the state of my body hair depends on the season. My legs don't get shaved in winter, not until the hair starts snagging my knee size. When I'm done shaving, the bathtub looks like I murdered a small mammal. Nowadays my chin hairs are white. I still pluck, or I'd look like the grandmother in Coco, and she's a cartoon character. But it turns out that my mother was not alone in her wacko beliefs. The exercise room at my local Y has a new poster up. In big, bold letters, it announces that beauty is brutal.
Ginny Lloyd grew up in England, and during her 20 years as a corporate wife, she also lived in Italy and Mexico before moving to Rochester in 1980. During her eclectic teaching career, she has taught every subject and every grade level before getting her PhD at 52 and becoming a history professor. She's the author of Catching Maggie, the Runaway Shetland Sheepdog, and In My Mind's Eye, a memoir of growing up on a farm in the west of England, including her memories of World War II and her experiences in a boarding school. And you'll find her books right over here on the table. A little known fact about Ginny is that her birthday is April Fool's Day. And she's going to tell us about making more effort.
Is this in the right place?
Yes.
My father had dark wavy hair that stayed tidily in place wherever he combed it. My mother's hair, while a light brown shade generally called mouse, also had a wave. Neither my brother nor I inherited my father's hair, but my brother got my mother's wave. I didn't. All I got was the mouse colour. My hair is fine and irretrievably straight. As soon as my hair grew beyond baby fuzz, it became a problem to control. An early photo shows me aged 1.5, sitting in my pram with a large stuffed animal called Dum Dum. My mother had cut my hair in a bob and put a clip to keep it off my face. The clip, the same as an American bobby pin, was called a Kirby grip, after the British manufacturer. Unfortunately, because my hair was so fine, even Kirby grips slid out, needing constant replacement. Also, I have a pronounced widow's peak, a pointed hairline in the middle of my forehead, the name deriving from a medieval widow's headdress. Folklore said it meant a woman would survive her husband, which actually turned out to be true. For me, it meant that unless I had a centre part, my hair stood up in the wrong places. My mother, the one in charge, decided to grow it longer. I just wanted it out of my eyes. In a later photo of me, aged 4, my hair has grown and I have a centre part. It's pulled back off my face into 2 bunches over my ears, like twin ponytails. During wartime, when rubber bands were scarce, my mother usually used ribbons as fasteners, which slipped off just like the Kirby grips. As my hair grew longer, My mother tried pigtails or plaits, American braids. My hair grew long, almost to my waist, and needed a lot of brushing each night. I was told to give it 100 strokes with the hairbrush. My mother plaited my hair, and as with the bunches, tied the ends with ribbons, which also slipped off all the time, leaving an unravelling mess. After the war, rubber bands reappeared. They got caught in my hair and hurt when I pulled them off, but they stayed put and were still camouflaged by the ribbons on top of them. That hairstyle lasted. However, unless the braids were plaited very tightly, wisps of hair escaped and threatened to disintegrate into loose and messy pigtails, with most of the hair sticking out. I never learned to make the plaits tight enough by myself and always needed help. My aunt worked at my first boarding school and plaited my hair for me, pulling it as tightly as my mother did, but with the same wispy results. When I moved aged 10 to a more district boarding school, I had no help, and there was a lot more emphasis on tidiness. I tried to get better at plaiting, but failed even when I tried a single braid rather than two. In our scramble to get dressed in the morning, no one had time to help me, and I was too ashamed of my incompetence to ask. I reverted to bunches, but they looked too juvenile. Finally, fashion helped me out when I was 14 with the advent of the urchin cut. The new style, short with bangs swept to the side of one's face, appeared in newspapers and magazines, and girls started having their braids cut off. I persuaded my mother to let me lose mine and never missed them. I was liberated from plaits, from rubber bands, from ribbons. At school, I didn't have to do anything other than brush and comb my hair and submit to the weekly hair wash when matron also checked for nits. I never had them. I enjoyed the liberation from fussing with my hair, and when my cousin, a professional photographer, took photos of me when I was in London for the Queen's coronation, I actually thought I looked good. A rare feeling. Unfortunately, mostly my hair didn't stay tidy. My widow's peak meant that the bangs didn't hang evenly but stuck up erratically. I didn't care. Even better for me was the popularity of the ponytail, an American import in the 1950s. For me, the ponytail was the perfect solution. Easy and neat, although wisps still escaped from the unavoidable rubber band. I grew my hair long again, parted it in the middle, scraped it back, and was satisfied. I even collected ribbons to match my meagre wardrobe. As far as I was concerned, the ponytail was my hairstyle for life. My hair had been a constant nuisance. This way, it wasn't. My mother had other ideas. When I was 16, she decided it was time for me to have a perm. I had always envied girls with naturally curly hair, so I was happy at the prospect, which I saw as a step towards adulthood. She took me to her hairdresser in Lostwithiel, a nearby town that also housed our doctor and the factory where we took the farm's milk. The hairdresser was on the corner of two main streets and run by Gladys, a woman who had come from London with her alcoholic husband, who had the unusual first name of Heneage. I believe Gladys thought Methodist Cornwall would provide Heneage with less opportunity to drink. But Lostwithiel had several pubs, and Heneage hung around about the beauty parlour morosely until they opened. Gladys liked my mother, who spoke BBC English, and reminded her of the so-called civilised world she had left. The hairdressing shop was a room in Gladys's house, and you could smell the sewer-like chemicals of the perm solution as soon as you came in. Having a perm was a performance. First, Gladys cut my hair short again and washed it. Then she divided it into small strands, attached a piece of what appeared to be tissue paper to the end of each strand to protect the ends, and wound the hair up onto a small roller fastened by a rubber band stretched across it. The rubber bands pulled and reminded me of the ones that had tied the ends of my plaits. When Gladys was done, which took a while, she doused my head in the chemicals that would miraculously give me curls. I then sat under a hot dryer to set the perm, after which Gladys poured over a neutralizing solution, rinsed my hair and washed it again. It was done. I eagerly scanned the results in the mirror. I was expecting neat waves like a film star's. What I saw was an unmanageable frizz. My fine hair had embraced the perm with a vengeance. "Don't worry," said Gladys, "we have to set it yet." She got out more rollers, bigger this time, and prepared me for another spell under the dryer. This time the result was better, with some of the frizz tamed to looser waves, but I wasn't sure I liked the unfamiliar me. Of course, as soon as I was back at school and away from a hairdresser, the frizz returned. I tried to tame it myself with rollers, but never succeeded. The best I could hope for was the more relaxed curls that came as the perm gradually lost its strength. Then, of course, I had to go through the whole thing again. After a couple of years, I rebelled against the perm and went back to a ponytail. When I was in a Greek play at school, my Latin teacher thought I looked good in a Greek-like chignon. But as with any other style that depended on me coaxing my hair into something it didn't want to do, the result was the usual wispy mess. At university, I cut my hair short again, parted it in the middle, and tucked it behind my ears. It escaped and blew in my face, especially when I was on my bicycle, but sufficed except for parties, when I felt I needed to make more of an effort. I resorted to beer. I washed my hair, rinsed it in a can of beer, and rolled it up in rollers, a process at which I became reasonably competent. The sticky beer kept the resulting waves from disintegrating. Heaven knows what my boyfriends thought. When I got married in 1962, I had my hair cut and styled at one of the Vidal Sassoon salons in London. I had a perm for the first time since my teenage years and found that what they then called cold perms allowed my hair to be wavy, not a frizz. That night, the night before the wedding, I slept upright to preserve my hairstyle. It still looked good the next day, although I felt I was a false impression of the real messy-haired me. In the mid-60s, it seemed as if my moment had come. Hippiness was in, and everyone wanted long, straight hair. Some people even ironed their hair to get what I had naturally. Unfortunately, my timing was wrong. Wives of budding business executives weren't supposed to look like hippies. I continued to perm my hair and had it set once a week. I didn't wash it in between, which meant my school pupils watched my hairstyle deteriorate day by day. I gave up work, temporarily as it turned out, to have my first child, and no longer had time or money to go to the hairdresser. Gradually my hair grew until it was long enough to tie back in a ponytail again, the hairstyle, if you can call it that my hair seemed to like best and that gave me no trouble. Despite my husband's increasingly responsible positions at work, my only concession to business wife appearance was to wear my hair loose when we entertained visiting executives. But when we moved to Rochester, as a vice president's wife, I believed that I needed to make more effort. Back to the short hair, perms and weekly hair appointments. That lasted as long as my husband did in the job. Our divorce freed me from being a business success. I kept my hair short and curled the side and bangs daily with a portable hair curler. At least it kept it out of my eyes. As my hair turned grey, then mostly white, it became a little coarser, and it kept a curl somewhat better. After I retired, I thought of shaving my head, the ultimate solution, although still one that required maintenance. Instead, I chickened out, grew it a little longer, stopped curling it, and pushed it back behind my ears in the morning, which gives the sides a little wave. You could say I've given up. I think I've just retired my hair.
Our next reader, Noella Schum, has a deep reverence for our mother, the earth, who cradles us. She considers music to be the bridge to the heavens. Her experience has been from the mundane to the sacred, working with school children, the elderly, the sick, the incarcerated. She's led in spiritual direction, group facilitation, music and movement. She's been a bus driver, a school janitor, and a cook. She says she has journaled every day since she was a teenager and amassed a trove of mystical poetry. She's working on writing and illustrating a children's book right now, and she is going to share The Mysterious Fallout. You're taller than I am. Anyway, so do you want to adjust that? Okay.
Okay, 2 parents, 7 kids, 9 hair types. Curly golden brown, I think, in my imagination, I'm not sure it turned white. Straight dusty brown, straight wood brown with a cowlick, straight platinum blonde turned to dishwater blonde, wavy frizzy strawberry blonde ripened to faded flax and peach skin color, wavy light cocoa, wavy earthy carrot turned to sweet potato skin, now topless, thick wavy deep red, kind of stubbly in the morning, and other times of day, sits there, up there. Number 7 kid, wavy copper cinnamon, recently chased away. I heard I was the apple in my grandpa's eyes, with my fat cheeks and strawberry golden hair that turned curly from a hair wash in the plastic swimming pool in the backyard, my mom said. This hair was fine but very thick at the bottom, needing pruning every season. There was that time of perms when my hair turned baby pink from the chemicals and the era of sponge curlers I wore at night that dented my head, plus the curling iron that resulted in fried hair. There were years of washing my hair in the sink with Palmolive dish liquid as it destroyed the hair shaft with its harsh chemicals. The crowning glory became whittled away. Then comes the disaster era. High school. We wear royal blue blazers. As my friend Christine has a pile of dandruff on her blazer, I have an alarming pile of dead hairs appearing on mine. As a teen, being concerned about appearance, this brings me to shame, deep despair, and desperation. One day it all came to a head. What I mean is the sickly, dead, disintegrated shafts coalesced into one big knot the size of a ping pong ball and had to be chopped off. This was about 1/3 of my hair, it seemed. The repercussions were enormous, and the social anxiety about appearance hit me in the face everywhere I went. I turned down invitations from suitors in case I had to be exposed. Or how would I deal with an overnight? Do I wear a scarf to bed? Do I hope that daylight never comes? I lost my true love because I rejected his invitation to a campout, which would have revealed the truth. He then invited his number 2 choice, leading to the end. What else did this entail? How did it alter my life? I would only work where I was allowed to wear a scarf. I even had to file a discrimination complaint allowing me to wear one. I failed, and it was humiliating. I went to the hat shop and found a sickening, bouffant, synthetic strawberry blonde wig, which I planned to wear on a 2-month cross-country trip with my 2 sisters in our multi-colored assortment of hair types. It was itchy and oppressive. I wore it once and then threw it out of the Greyhound bus window in some hayfield or something like that. I pictured my fallen hairs fertilizing the land, being deposited from Toronto to Tijuana. Luckily, scarves went well with my hippie skirts and peasant blouses. So the search went on for years, altering my life in so many ways. There was all kinds of remedies: aminopun shampoo, hormones, prednisone, thyroid, B vitamins, false hopes, and prayers bringing unknown results. The day that I disposed the stupid, burdensome scars in disgust and exposed my scalp to the sun and wind felt like being released from a prison. I cried with tears of bittersweet joy. So years went by with the wispy, gossamer, pretty shade of hair and altered lifestyle. Being pregnant brought some relief, and being postpartum brought more despair, if you know what I mean. And so more despair and less hair, to be poetic. A disastrous heart infection further added to my hair story. Being in septic shock, my hair fell out in gobs. Miraculously, after this loss, months later in recovery, the new and stronger, more colorful hairs grew in. So there was a reprieve, yet there was depression about the stringy ends. My mom did not seem to understand why I couldn't unscraggle the hair ends. Thinking of saving money, I asked my teen daughter to trim my hair. Well, that was a supposed disaster. Supposed. I looked like a ridiculous 40-ish lady with a 1950s kindergarten pixie cut. Horrified and contemplating a 3-month retreat in a monastery, it was time to just get it all chopped off. Wow, it became healthier without the weight and actually very elegant. After many of these stylish haircuts that had to be altered 2 to 3 times per cut tired me, and I let it grow out. So a new life of freedom emerged. Hair has grown back, and I'm free from the torturous self-consciousness. Well, you don't have to look too close. Anyways, it's no longer a major concern. And I believe the mystery is solved. For your information, in case any of you need it, after years of male absorption and discovering a way to treat it last spring, hairs actually came pouring out again. And why would that be? Because a new and healthier crop was emerging. So, are you losing your hair, anyone? Are you afraid of losing your hair? Or are you, is it gone? Okay, here are some hair tips from a pro. Do not wash your hair in the shower, it flattens the top. Use the kitchen sink instead. Mix the shampoo with water first to make it sudsy so there's not a waxy coating remaining. Do not use commercial detergents with sodium lauryl sulfate. It expands and weakens the hair shaft. Do not rub. Do not blow dry. Use no cream rinse. It takes the poof away. Use a wide tooth comb and start from the bottom underneath. Eliminate sugar, which destroys nutrients, causing bacterial imbalance in your digestive system. And scalps do like air and sun. And have sympathy on those who deal with this. Now I trade places with my sister's hairless chemo scalp and lost copper tresses as she enters her hair journey. One thing we know, there will always be discarded hairs composting the earth.
Well, your next reader is yours truly. And I believe that a story is the shortest distance between two people. I love reading, writing, listening to and discussing stories. And I'm particularly partial to the spoken word. And that's why I started StoriesRoc 3 years ago, because I wanted the pleasure of hearing true personal stories on a regular basis. So thank you for being a part of this. I really, really love this. And a little known fact about me, well, anybody who knows me knows this. My grandsons and I enjoy sharing juvenile jokes. So Raphael recently asked me, what is the worst kind of cut you can give a bunny? A haircut. A haircut. Oh, isn't it good? We sit there and laugh and nobody else does. Okay. So I'm going to take you back to the culture wars of 1969. I don't want this card or the sentiments in it, my mother said, slamming the Mother's Day card back into my hands. The Bible says to raise up a child in the way he will go, and he will not depart from it. Mother turned and left for church. I was too stunned to move. She hadn't slapped me or punched me in the gut, but her words had the same effect. My chest felt as hot as the crumpled piece of red construction paper I held in my hand. My homemade card had the picture of a yellow rose on the front, her favorite flower. I opened to the poem and read it again to try to figure out what had inspired her wrath. I had just discovered the Lebanese mystic Khalil Gibran, and I thought each poem in the Prophet was so startling and wise, and especially the one on children, which I had carefully copied. Your children are not your children, he wrote. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You are the bow from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. I had written, thank you for being a stable bow. I love you. It had been rendered without malice, but she probably hadn't read that far. True, I'm sure she preferred a Hallmark card. And it wasn't that I had been too cheap to buy one, it's just that I couldn't find one with the appropriate sentiments. It was complicated. Well, wasn't it obvious? My mother's parents were uneducated, unskilled laborers from Arkansas that we hardly ever saw because my grandpa drank beer, and my grandmother was obsessed with the book of Revelation and the rapture. When my mom, yeah, what a character. When my mom married my dad and became a Nazarene, she said all her questions were answered. She wanted nothing to do with her hillbilly relatives. And now, since my parents apparently had all the answers, they wanted to save me all the trouble and just tell me what to think. And that hadn't been going too well. I was a junior in high school, and my American history teacher, Mr. Miller, challenged us to stand for something. We read the feature article in Time magazine every week, and we were asked to take a side and defend our arguments every Friday. We debated the war in Vietnam, civil rights, Martin Luther King's protests, women's liberation, legalizing drugs, gay rights. And at first I parroted my father's position. He was certain that the war in Vietnam was stopping communism, and Dr. Martin Luther King was a communist agitator. And of course he voted for Richard Nixon. But the lively arguments in history class rattled all my former certainties, leaving me hungry to know more. When I announced to my parents that, according to Time magazine, Masters and Johnson were doing research on human sexual response, my father shook his head in disgust. That's something that's supposed to stay in the bedroom, in the dark, between a married man and his wife, he said, looking at my mom. She wrinkled her brow and flipped the page on her Better Homes and Gardens magazine. Profanity, nudity, illicit drug use, Vietnam War protest, desecration of the American flag. The Time magazine article said about the Broadway musical Hair. Don Topfer, a boy in my church, called to tell me he had tickets for the New York touring production. Did I want to go? When? Tonight. Tonight? It's Wednesday. We have prayer meeting. Well, we can skip it. Oh, I felt giddy. Okay. I finished my homework, helped with dinner, and cleaned up the kitchen, all while trying to act nonchalant. I waited until my family members had all dressed and walked across the parking lot to church before pulling on my pair of bell-bottoms and peasant top. No, I wasn't a hippie, but I had hair. In 6th grade, I had said no to any more amateur haircuts, crooked bangs, and Tony permanents. I wanted long hair, and now I had it. Thick, brown mane, parted down the middle and flowing down my back. Don knocked at the door at 7:30. His brown wavy hair was parted on the side. He wore a yellow t-shirt, jeans, and sandals. We slipped into his blue Corvair, and we were on our way. Did you tell your parents where we're going? I asked. Oh, no. Did you? Well, of course not. We're both going to get killed, you know. Don shrugged. Gotta live a little. The theater buzzed with conversation and laughter when we took our seats near the front left side. Towers of box speakers on each side of the stage broadcast music by Janis Joplin, The Doors, Led Zeppelin, making conversation challenging. Swimming in vibration and pulsing with the bass beat, we wide-eyed Nazarenes watched the theater fill with people. Now, across town at Victory Hills Church of the Nazarene, the organist was no doubt playing I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, when love lifted me. But in the Strand Theater, Don and I were listening to someone play the organ while Jim Morrison belted out, "Hello, I love you, let me tell you your name. Hello, I love you, let me jump in your name." Whoa! Walking down the... Okay. I heard a twittering of nervous laughter to my right, and then a startled, "Oh!" behind me. I turned to look. A young man wearing nothing but loose, flesh-colored loinscloth and a string of beads came snaking forward on the top of the seats and was now crawling across the row in front of us, taking delight in wiggling his bare bum in a woman's face. He rolled over and sat, spreading his legs wide, revealing a profusion of hair. Well, I had to look. But I turned away. I mean, I was curious.
And then look back.
And I looked back. What else did he want? He wanted to catch us looking, turning away, blushing, and I was doing all three while wiggling in my seat. But it was a little more of a hair experience than I was expecting. He proceeded up the rows, moving towards the stage. I glanced at Don. He looked straight ahead. More actors were coming. Please don't come down our row. I could barely breathe until they were all safely on stage where they belonged. I wondered if the New York City actors were taking special delight in getting a rise out of their Kansas audience. What, did they think we were all a bunch of hicks? Innocence? Or maybe we were. Well, yeah, I had come there as a voyeur, prepared to see naked bodies, but on the stage, behind the fourth wall, not in my face. Well, finally the music stopped and the house quieted down. The tribe was now on stage and began to sing. But none of the profanity, nudity, and illicit drug use on stage could shock me any more than the pre-show spectacle. The rest was a bit of a blur. I mean, what difference did it make if Jupiter aligned with Mars? The song playing in my head was from Three Dog Night. Mama told me not to come. That ain't the way to have fun. No. I thought of the things that divided us. On the one side, people were burning draft cards, flags, bras, staging sit-ins, love-ins. And on the other, people were waving flags, arresting, trampling, and beating protesters and black people. Sound familiar? I was caught. There didn't seem to be any middle ground. I didn't know where to stand. All the way home, my body hummed, my ears rang. What'd you think of the show? Dawn asked. The house was dark as I slipped in the basement door and climbed up the stairs to my room. I crept into the bathroom to brush my teeth, and when I opened the door, my mother met me in the hall. You weren't at prayer meeting, she said. I tried to walk past her, but she grabbed my arm. Where'd you go? I stiffened, waiting for her to let go. You don't want to know. Tell me where you went, she demanded. I considered the question. Was it worth telling the truth? The show had been enlightening and also offensive. I wasn't even ready to talk about it. All I knew in that moment was that I wanted to defend my right to have an experience of my culture without her permission. I wanted to know what was outside the church compound. Don Topfer and I went to see hair. Oh, Leah, she groaned. Why would you want to see such filth? I told you didn't want to know. I yanked my arm free. Mom, it's 10:30, it's school night, I need to go to bed. Oh, Leah, she sighed, shaking her head in disgust. I lay in the dark, ears ringing, body still buzzing, wondering, why can't I talk to my mother? My friend Debbie Frentop said she sat on her mother's bed and told her everything. I couldn't tell my mother anything. If she had asked me how I felt, what I experienced, why I wanted to go, I might have told her. But looking back, I clearly see a fledgling testing her wings, learning to trust her inner compass, while confronting those heavy crosswinds of culture and the tight hug of family and religion. I also affirm my young soul's recognition of both wisdom and bullshit. Carl Jung says that creativity requires the tension of opposites. There must be a powerful force in order to constellate a counterforce. And if we can just hold the tension, have a dialogue, there will be a new arising. And today, as a wiser woman, I recognize the current culture wars. Most of the time I welcome the tension. I hope for the dawning of a new day, possibly even the age of Aquarius. A little known fact, and I didn't check this out with you, Kim. Your nickname?
Sisu.
Sisu, that's what I thought. Sisu. It's a Finnish word that roughly translates as spirit, determination, and grit. Her friends gave her this nickname during a cross-country ski vacation. All the trails were named in Finnish. And her first time on skis, after an hour of doing face plants and getting back up, her friend commented, "Kim, you have spirit. You have sisu." Kim will finish off the night with "The Marker of a Meaningful Life."
Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So I do want to mention, someone had mentioned earlier the idea of a trigger warning, so I will say that there is some emotionally intense material in here, including mention of suicide. So if that is upsetting to you, it doesn't come until near the end, so you can scurry out. You won't be offended at all. Okay. Whenever I sit down with the hairdresser and they ask, "What are we doing today?" I respond, "I just need less hair." A perplexed look typically follows. Our society's script for women is that we're supposed to care about our hair. I don't. The best times in my life have been when my hair is a mess. Backpacking up a mountain pass with my hair covered by a sweaty bandana, kayaking at Adirondack Lake with a visor holding my hair back from the wind, doing farm chores during a frigid Vermont winter with my hair tucked in a wool hat. Or most recently, surfing a wave in Hawaii with my wet hair pulled back in a ponytail. Wet because I fell off the surfboard many, many times. Most of these points in my life have involved extended periods in which I did not even wash or brush my hair. Those were some of the best times in my life. Alas, I no longer work on the farm, and I'm not always backpacking or paddling my lovely kayak named Clementine. In fact, I'm on faculty in a medical school, and they seem to expect to have me dress professionally, and apparently professionally does not involve ponytails, braids, or those really fun sweaty band headbands that come in fantastic colors. One is also supposed to blow dry one's hair instead of rushing into a meeting in the morning with dripping wet hair and a fresh coffee stain on one shirt. In fact, I even have a weird medical condition in my ears that necessitates I dry my hair right away so that my ears don't have moisture around them. Does that mean I dry my hair? Nope. Well, not unless you count turning the heat on in my car full blast and drying it like that. My hairdresser says that doesn't count. There are likely many reasons I don't care about my hair. I don't like looking in the mirror. I prefer playing outdoors over activities that call for nice hair. I don't like people to look at me, to notice me. I don't like my body except when it helps me get to cool places or have amazing experiences. My lack of attention to my hair is one way in which I don't fit into this life I've built for myself. A life of an academic who lives in a nice neighborhood and has friends who are married with kids and a dog. I'm a mess. My hair is a mess, and it's getting exhausting living in a world where your hair isn't supposed to be a mess. I just finished reading a memoir titled The Misfits Manifesto, and it resonates with me, the idea of being a misfit. I think life breaks us all at some point or another, but for some reason the way I was broken hasn't healed yet. And I've been trying and trying to fit in, but I just don't. The way I've been broken makes it so I can't manage to have a partner, at least not a romantic one. The way I've been broken makes me exhausted all the time, afraid much of the time, and completely uninterested in trying to look pretty. And our society's story is that that is not okay. It's something that needs to be fixed. But what if that just isn't true? On a recent grueling hike on a volcano in Hawaii, my hair was matted to my head with sweat. And as I wiped loose strands of my hair from my face and looked up at Madame Pele's smoky signals, it occurred to me that easy and pleasant and put together and professional and pretty isn't the marker of a meaningful life, at least not on my journey. And when I walk or paddle or swim, I'm able to find sanctuary in my own being, acceptance that I don't have to fit in to be okay. But in this life I've created for myself, I'm required to be okay, at least on the outside. I'm required to be put together in every way one can be put together, including styled hair. As I scrambled over boulders trying to get closer to active lava, different story, I was ready to own the fact that I've been recreating my deepest wound, my most profound trauma, and many choices I've made, and in the life I've created for myself. I hate the term research is me-search, but for some, myself included, it fits. I've resisted that a long time. I have a story about how I came to focus on suicide prevention in my work, and it never involved my childhood. But that's total crap. I think the volcano helped me get real. The times I was most wounded by my mother were the times she prepared for us to die together. I was around 8 or 9 the first time. My father had died a year or so before. My mom would attach a hose to the exhaust pipe of the car, which was in the garage, and tell me the best thing for us would be to die together, that we would just fall asleep. I can see where we were the time I agreed to get in the car with her, the dining room attached to our garage. I was crying. I said, "Okay, Mommy, okay," and we walked toward the door. As we got to the door, though, I collapsed and sobbed, "Mommy, no, please, I can't." I was terrified. I have no idea what happened after that, though I'm pretty sure it involved yelling and rage. So my story has always involved suicide, and I became an expert in suicide prevention. Coincidence? I convinced myself it was, but it's probably time to let go of that story. I spent my professional career trying to understand suicide, and I'm starting to wonder if I've been doing that to try to understand why my mom would want to kill me, why suicide was supposed to be my destiny. But no matter how many studies I run or papers I write, I'll never understand why my mom thought we had to die. I can't undo this trauma. In fact, the more I make suicide a central part of my life story, the more I may stay stuck. It might keep me from healing. I won't find sanctuary and peace with science or publishing or promotion. I won't find sanctuary when I force myself to try to fit into a life that involves blow dryers and haircuts with layers and other expectations I'll never meet. What does that mean for where I'll go next, what I'll do next? Right now I'm not sure, but I think my path needs to include more bandanas, visors, wool hats, and ponytails. It needs to include joy and peace and wild, messy, unbrushed hair.
Let's hear it for some wild, messy, unbrushed hair.